Everyone, welcome to this webinar today on 9 key functions brought to you by FP&A Professionals Institute. FP&A is gaining a lot of prominence today. I keep interacting with a lot of CFOs, and the only thing that I hear is that we are looking for an FP&A talent and we are not getting the right one. So this is just a step. Today's webinar is just a step towards helping you understand what FP&A function is and what are some of the key activities carried out in the FP&A roles. A little bit about us to begin with. My name is Dhawal Parvatikar. I'm a qualified chartered accountant. I've also completed my one-year executive program from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Over the last 16 years, I've served as a CFO and a finance leader in India and in the Middle East across various multinationals ranging from oil and gas, commodity trading, software, advertising and public relations. I'm now the co-founder at FP&A Professionals Institute. Over the last 5 years, I have been an active mentor, trainer, coach, and I've trained and coached more than 5,000 professionals on various topics like FP&A, finance business partnering, CFO coaching, leadership, and much more. I've also had the privilege of being part of more than a dozen CFO events in the last 12 to 18 months. Somewhere I have gone in as a speaker, somewhere I've gone in as a panelist, as a moderator. It has been an amazing learning experience to connect with more than 200 CFOs in the last 12 months. I've built an active community of 200 CFOs in the Middle East, and I'm happy to partner with my co-founder, Asif Masani here. So Asif, a quick introduction.
Thank you so much. I will quickly talk about my background and experience. So I've been working in finance, and mostly my experience has been in FP&A. So I've worked more than 10 years in FP&A, and I started as an analyst, and then eventually my last role was the FP&A lead for India and APAC at Coursera. After that, I and Dhawal decided to make FP&A Professionals, which was a part-time hobby for us back in 2022, a full-time institute. And that's when we made the FP&A Professionals Institute. And over the years, I have written 2 books on FP&A. So you can see those 2 books, and both of them have been Amazon bestsellers when they were published in the month of their publication. So that is a little bit about me. And what we have been doing over the last 3 years is we have been working on FP&A, meeting FP&A experts across the globe, right from North America to Europe to Middle East. And what we do at FP&A Professionals Institute through all our content, whether it be books, whether it be podcasts, whether it be videos on YouTube, or our courses or FP&A certifications, we try to bring in the best practical insights and experience to you so that you can benefit from that and grow in your career. A little bit about FPI before we get into today's topic, which is 9 key FP&A functions. So we started, as I mentioned, Dhawal started in fact in 2018 with the first the first ever FP&A course on Udemy, which was FP&A Foundations. It has been taken by more than, I believe, 2,000 students with an average rating of 4.2. And 2022 is when me and Dhawal came together, when I also published my first book. And we started our first FP&A masterclass with 25 students back in September 2022. And happy to share that over the last 3 years, we have trained more than 3,500 students across the courses that you see on the screen. And CGFPA, which is a Global Professional, has been our flagship program, which we have completed cohorts, and now a 4th cohort is going on, and we are now having admissions for cohort 5, which we will talk about at the end of the webinar. We're happy to partner with you, Dhawal, and looking forward to today's discussion.
Amazing. It's been a great journey. So yeah, it's roughly over a year now that, in fact, a year and a half now that we have quit our full-time jobs and completely dedicated to FP&A Professionals Institute. Amazing journey so far. So what are we going to cover today? So we'll start by a quick understanding of the FP&A as a function. Where does it fit into the CFO office? Why is it gaining so much of importance today? Then we'll go through a brief FP&A calendar to give you a glimpse of some of the activities that are carried out in FP&A. And then we'll deep dive into the 9 key functions of FP&A, or 9 key activities in FP&A that we want to cover for today. And then we'll dive into the details about the certification program that we offer at FPI and any other questions that you might have about your finance or FP&A career. Yeah, so that's the agenda for today. So the next 45 minutes are going to be extremely important. Get rid of all the distractions and let's dive into what we are planning to cover today. So where does FP&A fit into the organization? So if you can imagine a CFO's office, a CFO has multiple roles and responsibilities, okay? And there are a number of functions which are under the CFO's office. And each of them have their own specific responsibility. Somebody is responsible for financial reporting, somebody is responsible for taxes, treasury, M&A. Amidst all this chaos, somebody needs to keep a track on the performance of the business. Somebody needs to tell the CFO and other senior business leaders in the company how the business is performing. Are we pricing our products correctly? Are your business units performing profitably? Right? Are we hitting our budgets? Are we hitting our forecasts? So all of this is carried out by FP&A. So the main role of FP&A is to provide timely and accurate insights to the CFO and other senior business leaders in the company so that they can take informed business decisions. So that is where FP&A also enjoys this unique position of sitting very close to the CFO's office. So if you intend to be a CFO, or if your long-term objective is to become a CFO someday, then FP&A is something which you will definitely require to rise up to the ranks of becoming a CFO. Now, here's a quick snapshot of what are some of the key activities carried out in FP&A through FP&A monthly calendar. So this will give you a quick overview of these activities. Again, not an exhaustive list of activities, but it will give you a good overview of what are some of the activities carried out in FP&A. Because primarily, most of us think that FP&A is all about budgeting and forecasting. That's not it. There are multiple functions carried out in FP&A, and this calendar will give you a quick snapshot. Over to you, Asif.
Sure. So before we get into the FP&A monthly calendar, this is some context behind the calendar. So number one is that this is not the same calendar that you will see in your organization or the next organization you will work in. So this is based on our experience of looking at more than 20 plus organizations of different sizes, different scales, different industries. So what you are seeing is an average of those companies. So some companies might be doing better than this, some company might be doing not so good compared to what you see on the screen. So first is that you keep in mind that this is not what you will see in every company. This is an average best practice calendar. And more or less, if you see on an average, many companies, if you evaluate, you will see that, okay, most of the companies fit in this bracket. Now, another point is that it does not have your budget or your budgeting calendar. So budget is a one-time activity happening annually versus these are activities that happen on a monthly basis, on a every week. So it will not have anything related to your annual budget because that is a separate calendar that you have to work on, which is happening only once in a year. Okay. So those two things keeping in mind, I'll just walk you through how does the typical month of a FP&A look like. In the first month, you typically start with reporting and management reporting to be very specific. However, you don't have the numbers to report in the beginning of the month, at least for the first 5 days till the time the books of accounts are closed by the controller team or the accounting team. You don't have your actuals ready to report. So what the FP&A team does to help the senior managers still understand what is the month looking like or what is the previous month looking like, they provide something called as a flash report, which is basically an estimate of how the month is looking like, which will be more or less 95% or 99% accurate. And as and when the books are closed during the week, the numbers will become closer to actuals. And finally, at the end of the week, somewhere on day 5 or day 7, the accounts are closed and actual reporting is done, which is different reports sent to different teams in the organization, depending on which stakeholders you work with. You might be having sales report, marketing reports, HR reports, month-end reports, quarter-end reports. Different names are there, but ideally, what you're doing essentially is once the numbers are available, you are reporting your numbers to different business stakeholders or different functional stakeholders in the company. So that is how the first week looked like. So there's more or less on management reporting and closing the books or making sure that you close the books that are closed. Now, once the management reports are out of the way, most likely in the week 1. Second week, you will be spending on updating the forecast. By updating the forecast, what we mean is you will pick up the last version of the forecast that you had worked on maybe last month or last quarter. Some organizations do it on a monthly basis, some do it on a quarterly basis. So if you're doing it on a monthly basis, you will pick your last monthly dated version of the forecast and then start updating it for the next period. Okay, you'll pick that forecast, you will go through the assumptions one more time, sit with the stakeholders, get them aligned, get it reviewed by different people in the company. It will be reviewed by the business head, it will be reviewed by the CFO, and then finally you will have the updated version for this cycle forecast or this month's version of the forecast. Once it is updated, you can then lock it or you can freeze it as the version for this month. And then that forecast will be used by many people in the organization for tracking performance or for comparing performance when the actual numbers come next month or next quarter. So that is what usually happens in the forecast updates, which is usually the week 2 of most FP&A teams. Now, if your FP&A team is super efficient, you might be doing the forecast in week 1. You might be finishing management reports in the first 2 days, counter close in 2 days, and you might also be doing forecast in week 1. But more or less on an average, usually forecast gets updated in most companies in week 2. Once you're done with the management report and once you are done with the forecast, then week 3 is more of ad hoc work, which is more or less you are doing, picking up things that you could not do in week 1 and week 2. You could be working on analysis, profitability analysis, variance analysis, any other ad hoc projects that might be important for the company. Usually FP&A are working on some or the other one-time project, and you would ideally spend more time on those projects. It could be also automation so that it can help you become more efficient in week 1, week 2, week 4 for the next for the next accounting cycle. So that is where the week 3 is usually spent. So it is ad hoc analysis, ad hoc projects, automation. Also, once you complete the forecast, you also need to make sure that you keep an eye on it to highlight any major RNO, which is risk and opportunity. So you keep a track of your last updated forecast that you had submitted. Any major risk or opportunities, you need to make sure that you highlight that to your senior management as well. So that is more or less week 3 and week 1. So we talked about week 1, which is management reporting, week 2, which is forecasting. Week 3, which is more of ad hoc reporting and analysis and risk and opportunity, keeping an eye on ad hoc projects. And then you come to week 4, which is again preparing for week 1. So what happens in week 4 is you try to do preparatory work for week 1 ahead of time so that you don't have to spend a lot of time in week 1 for things that you could have done as a pre-preparation to week 1. So you do a lot of prep for week 1. It could be rolling forward of your models. It could be making new files. It could be rolling forward of your reports. A lot of those work, which whatever can be done ahead of time so that your week 1 becomes more efficient. You do that in week 4. And again, you flash reporting sometimes in the end of the month. So you don't, sometimes management may want to know on the 29th of the month, what does the month is closing looking like, even if the accounting is not done. So you start doing the flash reports at the end of the week and you continue doing that in week 1. And then the cycle continues from week 1 to week 2, week 3, week 4. Again, I'll just repeat. Week 1 is management reporting. Week 2 is forecasting. Week 3 is ad hoc analysis and automation and forecast risk and opportunity tracking. And week 4 is again, you start preparing for week 1. So that is how the typical FP&A average month looks like for most of them.
Great. Thanks, Asif. So I hope that gives you an idea that FP&A is not just about budgeting and forecasting. There are many activities that are carried out in the FP&A roles. Of course, the calendar was not an exhaustive list. There could be many activities. So today what we'll do is we'll focus on the 9 key functions of FP&A. So these 9 key functions are more or less common in any company, no matter small, medium, large. You will come across these 9 key functions and some of the other variations of these 9 key functions. So let's dive into the 9 key functions of FP&A. The first one is all about budgeting, right? So budgeting is your annual exercise. It is carried out just before the start of the financial year to prepare the estimated P&L or income statement for the upcoming financial year. What would be your estimated revenue, a different set of costs, and also your operating profits. So any company, right? So they'll have a vision, right? Let's say in the next 5 years, we want to double our turnover, triple our profits, or enter 4 more markets, right? So these are some of the visions that the management will have. But all of this will just remain a wish if it is not translated into an annual action plan. So that is where your annual business plan or the budgeting exercise comes into play. So we want to deconstruct that, okay, how much revenue do we want to achieve next year? How will it come from? Where will it come from? How much of new business we need to achieve? What are the resources and costs required for it? So that's where the end outcome of the budgeting exercise for the year looks pretty much like a P&L statement, which is prepared before the start of the financial year. That gives you a direction as to what are your numbers or targets for next financial year. And again, this is called with multiple names. Some companies called it annual business plan, some companies called it budgets, commitment, targets, plan. These are all some of the different names which actually represent a budget, right? So a budget is your estimated revenue minus your estimated costs, your estimated operating profit. So simply, it's like an estimated P&L statement for your upcoming financial year. Usually the exercise is carried out before the start of the financial year. Okay, and then it goes through a cycle of board approvals. Let's say, for example, you want to get your, Asif, you want to just cover this slide quickly?
Yeah. So what usually happens is you are working towards a deadline which is happening at the end of the year. Most likely in many companies, when you have Jan to December as your reporting or the financial year, you will have the board review meeting for reviewing the budget for the next financial year at the end of the year. And usually it happens around the second week of December, because in many organizations, people go on leave after the 15th of December for the last 2 weeks. Yeah. So let's assume that you have the board review for approving the budget on the 15th of December. So what you typically do in your budgeting calendar is you work backwards, and you then figure out if you want to do the budget review with the board of directors and with the board on December. You will need to get your CEO and CFO review done maybe 1 month ahead of time, because they will review it, they will give certain feedback, and they might also ask you to do some changes, and that might take maybe few weeks to define. So you do your maybe the CFO CEO review in November, and then to do that, you again work backwards. You need to now make sure that your consolidated budgets and reviewed set of budgets are available maybe at the end of October, so that you are able to prepare the CFO presentation in the time between October and end of November. So you have to make sure that you consolidate all the budgets that have been spent, that have been collected from different departments, and then all are reviewed, and any adjustments required, any conversations that require any changes are happening before that. You start typically anywhere between 3 months ahead of the board review. So you start with planning, which is you start with your budget calendar, budget guidelines, and templates that you need to distribute to different teams who are working on the budget. And then you work on collecting those templates, making sure that the teams are trained on those templates if they are new. And eventually you end up collecting all the different inputs that are required for the budget. Those are consolidated, reviewed, and then different reviews happen, right from manager reviews to director reviews, and then it goes to the CFO, and then the CEO, and then finally it goes to the board. So this entire process takes about 2 to 3 months in most multinational companies. If you are a smaller or a mid-sized company, it might happen faster. It might happen in a space of 1 or 1.5 months. But mostly in many companies, it takes anywhere between 1.5 to 3 months for the entire budgeting process, right from planning stage till the board review is received. And this is how typically the calendar or the timeline looks like in most companies.
Amazing. The second key function is forecasting. So while budgeting is an annual exercise, it is done before the start of the financial year. Forecasting is more of an ongoing exercise. It is either done to track the numbers on a quarterly basis or on a monthly basis, depending on how your company is tracking the numbers. So let us understand that with an example. So if budgets are planned for the year, they serve as a target or a blueprint for the upcoming financial year. Forecast is more about tracking the ongoing performance of the business. So let us understand this with an example. On the top table, you have your, let's say, budget 2023, and here you have your numbers, annual numbers, and you're seeing your estimated revenue, your costs, and your operating profits. Now, in the forecast, let's say the actual month of January is closed by now, and January actual numbers turn out to be $90,000 as opposed to the budgeted $100,000, but the margin still remains at 12%. So at the end of January, what we typically do is prepare a 1+11 forecast. Okay, a 1+11 forecast, which is 1 month of actuals, 11 month of estimates. In this case, you will see that the notation has changed from BUD to FOR, that is forecast. So it is coincidental that in this example, the numbers are actually the same as budget. However, it's at the end of January, I have an option to change these numbers. The forecast can be, it can be 103, 107, 104, whatever the case might be, right? So at the end of January. So similarly, let's say at the end of June, I will be preparing a 6+6 forecast, 6 months of actuals and 6 months of estimates. So this way, I keep track of the numbers. And then keep going on to track the ongoing performance of the business. Okay. So a budget is a frozen number approved by the board. It serves as a target. So budget once approved will not change. But what we do is keep tracking the numbers through a forecast. And forecast is done either on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, depending on the cycle that the company tries to follow. Now, after budgeting and forecasting, the third most important function in an FP&A role is management reporting. At regular intervals, you need to prepare a different kind of management reports to serve the senior management to take some decisions, allow them to take some decisions, evaluate some activities, and take some next steps in terms of hiring decisions, investment decisions, performance decisions. That is where management reporting becomes critical. Over to you, Asif.
So usually what happens in any organization is they have a defined set of reports that everybody uses in the company, and it becomes a common language across the mid-level management, senior level management. And when you are working inside the company, you will notice they are using certain acronyms or certain terminologies which only the people in the company understand. So that is how management reports are structured. The difference between your financial report, which is your balance sheet, cash flow statement, and the management report is that they are not required to follow any accounting or any gap or any company law, and they are more created for the seniors to take decisions rather than for compliance with any accounting standard or any company laws. So they are created as per how the senior management wants to view the business, and they are more intuitive compared to what you have as your usual set of statutory financial reports. Okay, these are some of the common management reports: month-end report, quarter-end report, flash reports. We already talked about briefly about flash report in the calendar. The quarter-end reports is are all these reports happen in the week one that we discussed. Risk and opportunities is what happened in when we looked at the calendar. And then there are some performance management frameworks like balance scorecard, OKR, CPI, that different companies follow based on how they want to evaluate their performance, or these are performance management frameworks which usually company uses to be able to track and monitor performance. We had done a detailed webinar on just this slide for 90 minutes last Thursday. If you want to get into the details of this, the recording should be available on our YouTube channel. I will share the links of our YouTube channel at the end of the webinar. So if you want to go into details of the management report webinar that we discussed last week, and you can do that. I'll share the recording. But these are some of the common management reports that you see in many organizations.
The fourth key function is variance analysis. Now, in order to execute these management reports, you will have to do different kind of comparisons. Actual versus budget, actual versus forecast, current month versus previous month, current quarter versus previous quarter. All of these different kind of comparisons. Yeah, all of these different kind of comparisons is what you will have to do. That is where variance analysis comes into play. So variance analysis is where you try and understand where the deviation is, because the senior management would like to understand, are we on track? If not, then what are we missing, or where are we deviating? So that is where you compare different kind of numbers: actual versus budget, actual versus forecast, current year versus previous year, all of these numbers, and come up with the reasons for these variances. Okay, and these reasons could commonly be why there is lower revenue, why there is higher cost, why there are higher overheads, and the reasons need to be business reasons. So the management is not interested in accounting reasons. Last month we missed some accrual. Now we have accrued some extra amount or extra cost in this month. That's an accounting problem. The business reasons are, let's say, for example, this month we are hitting a lower revenue in the market because a competitor hijacked our sales by coming up with some discount or promotion. Now that's a business reason, right? So this way you will have to come up with the business reasons to understand these variances, which will enable you to prepare those different kind of management commentaries, which will then go to the management to take some decisions. The fifth key function in the FP&A role is profitability analysis. Again, both variance analysis and profitability analysis are not something which is carried out in isolation. They are part of your management commentaries. And to execute those management commentaries, you'll have to conduct this variance analysis and profitability analysis. Now, what is profitability analysis? Now, it wouldn't be an exaggeration if we say that corporate profit is the sum total of all the financial decisions taken in the company. Now, whether you're deciding to buy a dustbin or setting up a refinery, every decision that you take in the company has either a direct or an indirect impact on the profitability of the company. So that is why, to run the company profitably, you need to make sure that each product is sold profitably. Each branch or a business unit is contributing to profits. Each service line is contributing to profits, or each client is contributing to profits. Let's understand this with an example. Let's take KPMG for an example, right? So KPMG is one of the largest audit and accounting firms in the world, or consulting firms in the world. Right now, KPMG may have different verticals within it. There will be an audit department, there will be a consulting, there will be an IT implementation, there will be forensic, there will be internal audit, there will be tax practice, and there will be different kind of departments there. Now, it shouldn't happen that a highly profitable audit is actually subsidizing a loss-making M&A division, right? So if it's a consistently loss-making M&A division, then why do we even need an M&A division? Yes, when you start something new, it might incur some time to break even. You may undergo some losses at that point in time. But end of the day, every business unit independently needs to start contributing for profits. So that is why corporates come up with different kind of profitability analysis, where the management would like to dissect the overall profit and understand where is this coming from and what is the quality of this profit. So that is where companies end up preparing different types of profits. If it's a product-based company, then they would prepare a product-wise profitability, service-wise profitability. If it's a bank or an insurance company, typically they would prepare a branch-wise profitability. If it's a company structured business unit-wise, then it will prepare a business unit-wise profitability, region-wise, territory-wise profitability, customer or client-level profitability. Pretty common in a service company like a software company or an advertising company, where they prepare a client level profitability, project level profitability. Think about a construction company or an architecture or an interior design firm. So they want to track project profitability on a project basis. That's where project profitability comes into play. Distributor or retail level profitability. Retail companies and FP companies want to make sure that every distributor, every retailer is contributing to the profits of the company. So this way, different kind of profitability workings are part of your management commentaries, right? And depending of the business, your company might be undertaking different kinds of profitability. Like for example, when I was working with an oil and gas company, territory profitability was something which was extremely important for us. But when I was working for an advertising company, client level profitability was important for us. So depending on the size and complexity of the business, the type of profitability analysis varies, which you will need to include in your management commentaries. And then the sixth key function of FP&A is data analytics. One thing that will be common in your FP&A role is you will be dealing with large chunks of data, whether it is financial data or operational data. And you need to know how do you navigate these large chunks of data. And that is where data analytics comes into play.
Yeah, so typically we cover this in detail in the CGFP module with different tools and techniques that you need to understand to right from how do you manage large amounts of data from cleaning, organizing to being able to create dashboards out of it. However, if I have to just summarize the data analytics process in the next 5 minutes, we would do it in a way looking at this chart, which is called as the data analytics continuum, where you have descriptive analytics on the bottom left, and as you go towards the right and towards the top, you would see diagnostic analytics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive. When you go from the left to right or from bottom to top, you would see that the analytics becoming more and more advanced. So for example, you would see descriptive analytics is just talking about what happened in the past, which is what you do basically when you do management reporting. So when you're doing your month-end reports or your different reports that you have seen in the previous slide, what you're essentially doing is you're talking about what has happened in the past. Now, when you do variance analysis or when you do profitability analysis that we just talked about, you're now trying to diagnose what happened after what happened. So you're trying to figure out why did that happen, or what is the insight, or what is the key takeaway from the last month's performance or your last quarter's performance by doing different kinds of diagnostic analysis, which include your variance analysis and many more other techniques. Okay, so that is slightly more advanced compared to descriptive analytics, which is diagnostic analytics. Basically trying to find out the problem, just like a doctor would diagnose your illness and figure out what the problem is, the root cause of the illness. Similarly, you try to diagnose what is the root cause in the business, and you try to. Next step would be to try to figure out how you can avoid problems in the future with this predictive analytics. So you try to forecast, which is what we saw in the FP&A calendar also, and the forecasting part in the last few minutes. So when you're doing forecasting, you're trying to predict the next quarter or the next month, where you're trying to figure out what will happen next. And that is where you would be doing different types of, you would be using different techniques of forecasting, which could include statistical methods, or which could use driver-based forecasting. And there are more methods of forecasting, which would typically use GFP program. So these are different predictive techniques that you use to figure out most likely what the next month or the next quarter will look like. And then finally comes the prescriptive analytics. Once you have diagnosed the problem, once you have predicted what it will look like in the next few months, then you try to figure out what can now we do next, or how can we achieve our target, or how can we achieve certain level of revenue, how can we achieve certain level of profitability. That is where the business understanding of the company and your experience as a senior FP&A or a senior leader would come in, where you would be able to connect the business understanding and then your analysis and prescribe or suggest changes or suggest actions that the company can take that will help in either improving the revenues or cutting down costs or some or the other benefit for the organization. This is the entire journey from descriptive analytics, which is management reporting, diagnostic analytics, which are different techniques. One of the examples could be variance analysis, profitability analysis, predictive analytics, where you're usually doing forecasting, and prescriptive analytics, where you're suggesting, influencing business decisions and trying to make sure that you are implementing whatever analysis you've done in your organization. So this is a little bit about the data analytics. Again, you use different types of tools. You use the SQL, you use Power BI. All of that are tools or means for you to be able to do these analysis. The next one after data analytics is financial modeling. So financial modeling is a common, not just finance people, not just FP&A teams, but any all the different finance teams outside FP&A also use financial modeling. So you would see this modeling come up in many other finance, equity research, valuation, and everything. So if you have been experienced in those roles, you already know what financial modeling is to a great extent. However, what financial modeling for is very specific use cases, what you see in your day-to-day life in your role. So how do you use financial modeling practices to be able to create revenue models, or how do you use financial modeling techniques to be able to do cash, or how do you use financial modeling to be able to create capital budgets or long-term forecasts for your organization. It includes techniques like sensitivity analysis, scenario planning. So these are some of the common overlap between the financial modeling skills and what is required in FP&A. And all the other things that you see on the left are some basics of financial modeling. So you should know three-segment financial model for sure, which is a basic foundation of financial modeling along with basic practices. And on the right-hand side, you see some financial modeling techniques which you may not use or you usually do not use in FP&A roles, which are good to know. And if you want to become a go-to expert in financial modeling, probably you should learn that as well. But if you are just working in FP&A and if you want to make sure that you utilize your financial modeling skills for your day-to-day FP&A tasks, the things that you see or the list that you see in the center would be the overlap, and those are the things you should focus, and you could learn that quickly in Savur. And that is what we also do in our program.
So the eighth key function is data storytelling. It is not only important how you analyze the data, it is also equally important how you communicate this data to the business teams, because they don't understand 10,000 lines of Excel sheets like how we do, right? So that's where data storytelling comes into play. Here's a simple framework for data storytelling, right? So data stories equals your data plus visual plus narrative. So these are the components of data storytelling. So data could come from any different kind of sources, right? Not only financial data, operational data, structured data, unstructured data. And then you use effective visuals. It could be a chart, it could be a graph, it could be just a number which is bold with a message, whatever your reasonably effective visual is for that particular story. And then comes your narrative. Narrative is your story or your headline or the message that you want to convey. For example, if I have a bar chart with 4 years of profitability data, I might start by saying that 2025, my most profitable year, right? So that is a headline, or that's the narrative that you want to drive the conversation into. And this is delivered to your audience. The audience you will need to understand. Probably the audience comes first, and then you'll have to reverse engineer your story accordingly. If it's a tactical audience, then you may have to give them actionable indicators. If it's a mid-level audience, then you can give them detailed and rich comparisons. And if it's a strategic audience, then you have to be quick and give them relevant information for decision making, because they don't have the time to analyze or go deep into problems, right? So there you may have to be a little bit more prescriptive that, hey, this is the problem, these are some of the options, now we need your decision whether to go with option A or B or C. So that is where you understand your audience, use your data, visuals, and your narrative to communicate the story or communicate the insights that is coming out of your financial analysis. And we cover enough examples on this in our CGFPA modules. And the ninth function is business partnering. Now, in business partnering, there are two main things. One is your ability to understand the business like a businessman, right? So that's your business acumen. And then comes your ability to build cross-functional relationships, strong cross-functional relationships across HR, across legal teams, across different business teams, sales teams, right? So I have actually kind of executed projects with nearly every department in the company. I've worked with HR on some projects, I've worked with IT on some projects, I've worked with sales and business development teams on a regular basis. This is where your collaboration and your value addition in your finance role comes into play. That's what business partnering is all about. And here's a quick framework that kind of helps you understand business partnering. It kind of is captured by this triangle, which has three elements. One is your insights. How do you communicate, convert data into insights and then communicate it to the business teams? Then building strong cross-functional relationships and relationships within and outside of the teams. And then understanding your business acumen, your strategic business understanding, how your business is performing, where your competition is. Like, for example, one or a couple of things that I've actually done in all my roles, especially when I took on a CFO role, is to build relationships. I spent a lot of time, mostly in an informal setting, took them out for a coffee, went on a lunch with them, try and build those relationships with them as much as possible. To understand the business, a couple of things that I always did was I tried to follow the competition, right? So who are my next three competitors? Follow them on LinkedIn. What are they doing? This also allows you to get some insights about your industry and use that as a conversation in building relationships. Like, I, on a regular basis, used to go to the CEO or to the business unit head and say, hey boss, the competitor just announced this. How are we going to deal with it? Or how are you going to tackle that move? Right? So that is where your ability to understand the business comes into play. So your data to insights, building relationships, and your solid business understanding. That is what will help you to become a effective business partner and add value to your finance and accounting roles. Now, so these are the 9 key functions that we wanted to cover in FP&A. And one thing that you will notice about these 9 functions is that these have nothing to do with your IFRS or accounting standards or any accounting rule books or compliance rule books, right? These are all very much performance management skills, interpersonal skills, and business skills that are required to execute an FP&A role. So we did an extensive CFO survey and we narrowed down on 5 critical skills that today's CFOs and finance leaders are looking for in their teams. Now, which are these 5 skill sets? First is core FP&A concepts: budgeting, forecasting, management reporting, variance analysis, profitability analysis. All of this is your core FP&A concepts. Then comes your financial modeling, your revenue model, your business model, sensitivity analysis, scenario planning. All of these things come as part of your financial modeling specific to FP&A. Then comes your data storytelling. We just spoke about data storytelling. How do you effectively convert your data or your analysis into a strong story? And then comes business partnering, business acumen, relationships. How do you influence the business team to take prudent financial decisions? That is where your business partnering skills comes into play, right? And then finally, leveraging the AI and technological developments that are happening in the finance space. So these are the 5 critical skill sets that CFOs today are looking for in their teams. Now, in our survey, there was an interesting insight that came out. 79% of the CFOs said that it is generally difficult to find the right FP&A talent, which means everybody is looking for experienced FP&A talent, but there's not enough talent available out there, right? So today there is a huge demand for FP&A. There are a number of reports that suggest that FP&A professionals on an average earn anywhere between 15 to 30% more salary than regular finance and accounting roles. So what can be done about it? So that is where we thought there is a gap and we need to address this gap with our, close to 3 decades of experience that Asif and I have got. So that's why we developed our in-house program. It's called Certified Global FP&A Professional Program. It's a 6-month exhaustive certification. It's a global certification built and taught by CFOs and FP&A leaders. It has 10 comprehensive modules, which we'll talk about it in a while. Everything through 100% practical case studies, experiential sessions, simulations, group discussions, MBA style. Yeah, you'll also always be part of a global alumni network. CGFP program has been taken by students from more than 25 countries. You'll get sessions with personalized career coach, placement support, your resume review, your interview preparation, your LinkedIn profile review. All of these things will be part of your placement support. Again, we don't give you a guarantee, but there are a number of initiatives that we are doing to place our students. On an average, we end up sharing at least 3 to 4 jobs a week on the WhatsApp alumni community that we have. Monthly Q&A sessions, doubt-solving sessions from the faculty directly, external guest speaker sessions, reputed CFOs, global leaders, tool providers, latest technology, AI experts. All of those are coming to FPI to conduct monthly guest sessions, and we expose all of our alumni to monthly guest sessions every month at the end of the month. Then all of this is easily accessible through best-in-class LMS platform, where all the recordings and materials will be stored. You can go through them. For the CGFP program, we meet live once every Saturday for 2 hours. The current batch is going to be from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. IST, which is starting on 28th of June. And of course, Zoom, WhatsApp group, community chats, all of these things is what you will get as part of your curriculum. Now, there are 10 solid modules that are part of the CA curriculum. I'll let Asif cover the first 5 modules that you see on the left, and then I'll talk about the modules on the right.
Yeah, so the modules on the left, a lot of it already we have talked about in the webinar, so I'll just quickly cover them. Budgeting, for we give you, so the basics are covered, which includes different budgeting methods. How do you prepare budgets for the different parts of the income statement, right from revenue to your cost of goods sold to production to G&A to admin to R&D budget. So we give you examples, case studies for different types of budgets that typically go into FP&A teams budget cycle. We cover the end-to-end budget cycle in depth, the timeline that we saw earlier in the on the slide. Apart from that, there are capstone projects that will push you, or we will give you real life like data and ask you to build the budget step by step. And at the end of the capstone, you will need to create a presentation as if you're presenting that to the CFO or the board for approval of the budget. That is the entire budgeting forecasting module, which covers theory, applications, and also end-to-end cap. Then AI for finance and FP&A, which is ever changing. So we introduced that module in the beginning of this year, and we cover all the latest AI tools and techniques that FP&A and finance professionals are using, and we have had consultants come on and teach us how to use, for example, ChatGPT for finance and FP&A applications. How do you use tools like Gemini? How do you use Copilot? And how do you basically take advantage of all the AI tools that are available, along with keeping in mind that the data security risk? How do you make sure that you safely use those tools in case all of those will in future help you, and right now also helping you save maybe tens and hundreds of hours if you apply the right tool at the right time. That is a little bit about finance and FP&A. Then you have management reporting. We talked about different types of management reports. We cover management performance management frameworks in detail, including the balance scorecard, the KPIs, the OKR. We talk about variance analysis, profitability analysis in depth using case studies examples. And finally, we come to the financial modeling, the financial modeling for FP&A slide that we saw just a few minutes back. We go into each and every item and we teach you using case studies, examples, and hands-on practice Excel files. So that is what we typically do in financial modeling, which covers your revenue models, sensitivity analysis, scenario planning, budgeting, all of that using Excel formulas and Excel templates is what we do in financial modeling. So that is a little bit about the module that you see on the left-hand side. I'll let Dhawal talk about the data analytics and the other modules that you see on the right.
Thanks, Asif. So data analytics, again, we've talked about data analytics. You will be dealing with large chunks of data. You need to know your way. How do you navigate through this data? So that's why we cover topics like Power BI, SQL, Power Query. All those basic tools are covered. We don't claim to make you an expert in these tools, but at least we take you to a level where you are comfortable using these tools in your FP&A roles. Financial analysis, different kinds of financial analysis, horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, more from a CFO standpoint or a performance management standpoint. That is what is financial analysis, and then just ratio analysis. Storytelling and presentation, we have covered about it, right? So best practices in terms of storytelling, presentation frameworks, how do you use that in your CFO presentations? All of that is covered in the in the storytelling and presentations module. Then strategy. In any strategic decision in the company would be incomplete without sound financial analysis, whether it is entering into a new geography, acquiring a company, or any of these strategic decisions, right? So we cover all the popular strategic frameworks and also relate it with an example of how FP&A can contribute to the strategic decision. So that is what is strategy module about. And then comes your business partnering, your business acumen, building strong cross-function relationships. We share good 7 to 8 case studies about business partnering as to how you can truly collaborate with the business teams and add value to your FP&A roles or business roles as well, right? So that is what is the CGFPA program. Don't think about CGFPA as a certification or a course. It is more like a 2 decades of experience compressed into a 6-month program. So that is how we have built the CGFPA program. Okay. So now, what is the eligibility for CGFPA program? So you need to have either a bachelor's degree or a global equivalent in finance. Alternatively, you may have your professional qualifications like CA, CPA, CMA, CIMA, ACCA, or any equivalent qualifications of your respective country. Now, we don't claim to be a substitute for a CMA or a ACCA or a CPA. In fact, we are a supplement to these qualifications. We are also CPD UK accredited. You can claim your continuing credits in your professional qualifications if you're already associated with your respective bodies. Now, how will you get the CGFP award? There are 2 conditions. One is you need to attend at least 50% of the classes live online. We meet every Saturday just for 2 hours. Okay. And then you need to attend at least 50% of the classes live. And then you submit your capstone assignment where all the guidance will be given to you. The capstone is an end-to-end budget preparation till the stage where you are actually preparing a CFO presentation, right? So that is the capstone project. And once you complete the capstone project, you will be eligible for the final examination. The final examination is 50 questions, 100 marks, 2 hours, multiple choice questions examination. Once you go through the examination, then you will be awarded the CGFPA certificate from FP&A Professionals Institute. We are an independent body and we are accredited by CPD UK at this point in time. Now, the ROI for a course like this, I leave it to your imagination. The course fee investment in this program is $1,595. You can also have an option to pay in 5 installments. The course is for 6 months, live online. Every Saturday, we meet for 2 hours from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. IST. Apart from that, about 60 to 90 minutes of your own homework or your own self-study is required, because we share a lot of pre-reading materials. Sometimes we share case studies. Sometimes we ask you to go through some videos and then come to the classroom prepared for discussions. MBA style, we don't want you to spoon feed, but we at least want to make sure that we are using the class time for quality discussions and simulations and exercises. So about 3 to 4 hours of your weekly commitment is required. So this is designed for working executives. So you understand that all of you are busy executives. So the induction was on 7th of June 2025, the orientation session, but the classes are actually starting from 28th of June 2025. That is the last Saturday of this month, 28th of June 2025. The date that you need to remember is 20th of June 2025, which is tomorrow. The final round of applications for CG current cohort, which is the 5th cohort, is closing tomorrow. The current cohort is closing, the applications for current cohort is closing tomorrow. So make sure that you fill in your applications as soon as possible. Don't delay the applications, whether you decide to do it or not, but at least fill in the application so that the team can review your eligibility and then come back to you with the offer which is going on at that point in time. Okay. Don't just take our word for it. There are dozens and dozens of testimonials and alumni that you can reach out to. All of them have completed the CGFPA program. You can reach out to them. They'll give you some feedback about it. Many of them have been able to transition to FP&A roles. Many of them come to us with the feedback that they have been able to implement a lot of frameworks in their existing roles as well. So just don't take our word for it. You can reach out to any of our alumni and then they'll tell you how the CGFPA program was. Okay, just a reminder that the deadline is 20th of June 2025, where the final round of applications for CGFPA are closing. Make sure that you fill in your applications. Asif has shared the brochure and the application link in the chat box. You can go through it and try and fill in the application. It will just take 2 minutes. Just fill in the application and our team will reach out to you with the eligibility criteria.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we've already had 15 participants enrolled and we've done the orientation on the 7th. And we have right now 5 seats to fill, and we are still screening through the last week I've got in the last. So right now we want to close those 5 seats and then get started with the batch board 5 in the next few days. So what we will do is right now we will open for questions, and there are some questions in the chat box. We'll take those first and then we will open it on the mic.
Thanks everyone. All the
Thank
best. Bye-bye.
you. Bye.